So let's talk about sample size and response rates. The greatest area of work that my office has to do, and the largest preoccupation that I have, is maintaining a good response rate in IDEA, because we've gone to this online system. In the fall, when we launched the system, the results were actually pretty good. For the university as a whole, the average response rate was 72% across all departments. There were more than a dozen departments that had response rates above 80%. There were more than 20 departments that had response rates above 70%. And just for point of comparison, under the paper and pencil system, our response rates historically were in the mid-70s to high 70s. So we dropped a couple of percentage points, but I think there was a lot of concern. I was certainly concerned that we might drop much more than that. Now in the spring, response rates for the university as a whole went down to 69%. And I don't know if that's, I spent a lot more time on communication in the fall than I did in the spring, and we may just have to keep that up. It could be student fatigue. It's something that we just have to keep an eye on. Engineering historically has been very, very good in terms of the response rates you guys have achieved in most of the departments here. So kudos to you. You're up at the top range of the scale. So if we have response rates above 60%, IDEA says they are generally reliable. But your reliability increases considerably when you go from 60 to 70%, and once you get above about 75%, you don't gain that much. The difference in terms of reliability between 75 and 80 and 85, based on their analysis, is not that great. The other thing we want to pay attention to is the sample size. Generally, they say sample sizes less than 10 are not reliable, and sample sizes less than 15 are less reliable. So if you're teaching small classes, that's a challenge, because if you have 8 people in your class, even if you get 100% of those 8 to fill it out, that's still only 8 in the sample. Now you've actually, in the case of getting all 8, you've gotten the entire population for that class, but the individual scores given by each member in that class are weighted very highly. Obviously, you know, if 7 people rate you very highly and 1 person rates you lowly, if you have 6 or 7 responses, that's why it's not really reliable. You get sampling variation, you get random walk, you get a problem with consistency in terms of, does that, from a summative point of view for an administrator, is that really telling you about the teaching in that class and about the faculty member? Now, IDEA's guidance in terms of dealing with that is twofold. Number one, they say, first of all, if you have a sample size of less than 10, generally less than 15, but certainly less than 10, you have to aggregate a number of samples of that same class together to be able to have some actionable intelligence. So you want to be able to look at 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 administrations of that class together and say, is there any kind of pattern here, or is there no pattern? The other thing they suggest is that the whole system of IDEA should not be used for more than 50% of the summative evaluation of excellence in teaching. So in other words, these scores, by IDEA's guidance, shouldn't be used for more than half of the evaluation of excellence in teaching for P&T purposes, for example. I'm not really involved in the P&T process, so I think that the sort of open question then is, well, what about the other 50%? You know, we have classroom observation, we have, you know, there are a number of ways to go about that, right? But their guidance, which I passed along to administration, which I passed along to you as faculty, is don't use it for more than half.